Hello friends, I'm glad to welcome you back to the Ruslan Belov channel. Today, we'll take a detailed look at the situation in Ukraine as of October 24, 2025. A lot of significant and high-profile events have taken place, so let's get straight to the point. Let's begin with the Kherson direction. As a reminder, the day before, several pro-Russian sources published a series of videos showing combat activity in this region. In one of those videos, Russian commanders can be seen planning, or already conducting, an operation to cross the Dnipro River and land troops on the opposite, Ukrainian bank, effectively within the city limits of Kherson itself. According to the author of the footage, Kharkiv Island has come fully under Russian control. This is the very area we're analyzing right now. Comparing maps, we can see that on October 22nd they looked one way. By the 23rd, they had already changed, and as of today, no new adjustments have been made yet. Meanwhile, Ukrainian sources released their own footage from the area called Orikhiv, the southern part of Kherson. These videos show Ukrainian servicemen moving through the streets of the neighborhood. With this footage, Kyiv clearly wants to demonstrate that the territory remains under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. However, when we compare the entire body of published material from both sides, one conclusion becomes clear. The Russian army has significantly increased the intensity of its strikes in this area. It's difficult to say for now whether Moscow is preparing a real operation to enter the city through Kharkiv Island, or whether it's part of an information and psychological campaign meant to force the Ukrainian command to keep additional reserves here, preventing them from being redeployed, say, to the Zaporizhia region. In one of the videos, we can see strikes on the bridge connecting the southern part of Kherson to the central one. Losing control over this crossing would seriously complicate Ukrainian logistics and supply lines. New footage is also appearing from the southern and southwestern districts of the city, precisely where, according to analysts, Russian forces might soon begin an assault. In one of these videos, several Ukrainian military vehicles are shown being destroyed. Further northeast, closer to the port infrastructure, strikes are being recorded on Ukrainian positions, presumably on FPV drone-operated teams. And in the morning reports, there were new frames from the central and port districts of Kherson, where Russian forces are delivering massive rocket artillery strikes on targets within the city limits. The nature of these strikes increasingly resembles artillery preparation before an assault. Overall, it seems that everything happening in the Kherson direction may be part of a broader diversionary operation. The main goal is likely to tie up Ukrainian units in combat so they cannot transfer reinforcements eastward, where Russian troops are carrying out an active offensive toward Huliaipol. A similar tactic can be observed in the Orikhiv sector of the front. In recent days, Russian units have been actively attacking enemy positions near Tokmachka and Orikhiv. Some observers' maps already show slight changes to the front line. However, the meaning behind these attacks appears to be the same: to drag Ukrainian forces into prolonged battles so they cannot send reserves to more critical areas. It's especially important to pin down Ukrainian troops around Orikhiv, preventing them from moving equipment and personnel toward Huliaipol, where the situation for Kyiv is becoming increasingly difficult. Now let's move on to the eastern Zaporizhia direction. A particularly large amount of data, maps, and updated geolocations has arrived from there today. Let's start with the Poltavka fortified area. Russian armed forces continue advancing westward, getting closer to Huliaipol. On maps dated October 20th, we can see that full control over the Poltavka fortified area was recorded at that time. Since then, the Russian army has been gradually moving toward the western settlements, expanding its zone of influence step by step. Thus, the dynamics of recent days clearly show that in the southern directions, Russia is conducting several interconnected operations at once, each with both military and strategic significance. One part of the front distracts the enemy's forces, while another advances forward, exploiting the opened opportunities. We will continue to closely monitor the developments along the Kherson, Orikhiv, and eastern Zaporizhia directions to timely understand where these actions are leading and what new objectives might lie behind these maneuvers. Today, Russian troops have advanced almost directly up to the settlements of Veselaya, Zeleny High, and Chervone, moving from the direction of Malinivka and Poltavka. This information has been reported by neutral cartographic services. If confirmed, the collapse of this defensive line, Chervone, Zeleny High, and Veselie, would mean that the Russian army will be positioned right at the eastern approaches to Huliai-Pol. At the same time, Russian units continue exerting strong pressure on Ukrainian positions along the Uspanivka sector of the front. More and more footage is emerging from this area, showing that Ukrainian forces are trying to send in reinforcements, but most of them are being destroyed before reaching the front line, slightly northwest of Uspanivka, near the settlement of Zlahoda, formerly known as Pervomaiske or Pershotravenev. Footage was published today by the Vostok East grouping of troops. The videos show how the fighting unfolded: artillery and air strikes on enemy positions, clearing of the area by FPV drone operators, and several scenes where Russian soldiers raised the flag of the Russian Federation. Based on this material, as well as reports from the Russian Ministry of Defense, the maps have been updated accordingly. After taking control of Privolne, Russian units secured their positions and began advancing south and southeast with the goal of reaching the Uspanivka fortified area from the northwest. In the coming days, heavy battles are expected for the settlements of Rybny and Krasnohorska. Once those fall, the battle for the Uspanivka fortified area itself will begin. When Uspanivka is captured, the Russian army will be able to deploy a wide front and begin advancing toward Huliai-Pol from the northeast, which will likely lead to a key confrontation across the entire eastern Zaporizhia direction. Next, developments are unfolding near Novopavlivka, where there are also important updates. 2 days ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense officially announced full control over Ivanivka. Following that statement, most mapmakers updated their maps to reflect these changes. At that time, October 22nd, there was no video confirmation, but today, October 24th, it has finally been published. Footage released by the South Grouping shows Russian units clearing Ivanivka, striking targets, and advancing through the settlement. At the end of the video, soldiers are seen raising the Russian flag in the center of the village. This video serves as solid confirmation that Ivanivka is completely under the control of the Russian armed forces. Currently, units are continuing to advance north and northeast, attempting to flank Novopavlivka and force Ukrainian troops to retreat toward Mazhova. Now let's move to the Pokrovsk direction, which has also generated a steady flow of reports and videos. This morning, new footage was published confirming the advance of Russian units inside the city. In these videos, Ukrainian FPV drone operators are shown striking Russian army positions in the southern part of Pokrovsk. Some of the strikes have been geolocated. One of them hit a building near the railway on the southeastern side of the city, which divides Pokrovsk into 2 parts. This indicates that the urban battle is entering its final stage, and it seems increasingly unlikely that Ukrainian forces will be able to hold Pokrovsk. In addition, pro-Russian sources report active offensive operations northwest of the city, toward Hryshine. According to the latest data, all key supply roads previously used by Ukrainian forces are now under full Russian control. The Ministry of Defense also confirmed today that the settlement of Promin has come under Russian control. Ukrainian sources, for their part, report attempts to hold the southeastern part of Mirnohrad, but the situation there is also deteriorating. As of today, Russian forces control about 20% of the southern districts of the city, including the mining area. Fierce fighting continues in the north for Rodinske. Neutral analysts report that Russian forces have nearly completed clearing the settlement, and once Rodinske is fully under their control, an encirclement will likely form. Moreover, reports indicate that the Russian command in the Pokrovsk direction has issued an ultimatum to the Ukrainian side to leave the city by October 27th, that is, by Monday. Otherwise, Pokrovsk will be completely encircled. Now let's turn to the Siversk sector of the front, where the situation is also developing rapidly. The Russian army is focused on clearing the pocket between the settlements of Vyimka and Zvanivka, located between 2 railway lines. Ukrainian sources have published videos showing shelling of Russian positions along the forest belt, but these contain violent scenes, and we will not review them. It is evident that Russian forces are gradually advancing towards Siversk from the south, concentrating on Zvanivka and the surrounding areas. Further north, near Dronivka, the Russian Ministry of Defense officially announced its full liberation today. This statement was made during the defense minister's inspection at the headquarters of the southern grouping. After the publication of the report, maps were updated accordingly, marking the settlement as under Russian control. If information on Dronivka is fully confirmed, it would mean that Russian forces are effectively moving into the rear of the Ukrainian grouping holding Siversk. The next likely direction of advance will be toward Platonivka, from where a route opens to the T-0513 highway, one of the key supply roads leading from Siversk to Lyman. As for Lyman, important developments are taking place there as well. Mapmakers continue to update the area, marking changes in the forested zones between Lyman and Zaporizhia. Several new areas are labeled as grey zones pending confirmation. Meanwhile, Ukrainian sources themselves report that the first Russian units have already entered the city limits of Lyman and begun to consolidate their positions. Increasingly frequent reports point to Russia's advance in this area, and it is likely that in the coming days, video evidence will also emerge. The Russian army continues to hold its positions in the areas of Drobyshev, Novoselivka, and Yarova, where Ukrainian supply routes to Lyman once passed. These routes are now cut off. Attempts to resupply across the Siversky Donets River have also failed. In recent days, Russian forces have destroyed all crossings in this area. Some sources report that around 3 Ukrainian battalions may now be trapped in a potential encirclement. The outcome in this direction will likely become clear very soon. News is also coming in from the northeast of the Kharkiv region, from the settlement of Bologivka. Russian sources have shown footage from the combat zone and the raising of the Russian tricolour at several locations in the settlement. These materials indicate that Bologivka has come fully under Russian control. On the Vovchansk direction, the pace of the offensive also remains high. Reports indicate that the western part of Vovchansk has been completely cleared, and Russian units have reached the T-2104 road, cutting off supply routes to the central and eastern districts. On the eastern outskirts of the city, Russian activity is increasing. Fighting is now ongoing for the settlements of Zibino, Pokalyan, and Vovchansky Khutori, where the Ukrainian grouping has been left almost without supplies. Attempts by Kiev to send reinforcements are repeatedly thwarted. Columns are destroyed before they can reach the front line. The Russian army has established full fire control over all supply routes using hundreds of drones. Any attempts by the Ukrainian side to transfer forces to this sector end the same way. Both equipment and personnel are destroyed before they arrive. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and see you in the next reports.